If you're looking for a fun blues piece that's a great introduction to grace notes and triplets and that students love, you're going to want to keep watching. Today, I'm going to introduce you to a piece called Break Wall Blues, a level 4 piece from my collection, Cottage Country. Hi, I'm Jen from Ocean Tales Music, and Cottage Country is a collection of 11 intermediate piano solos and 1 duet for intermediate piano that teens and adults especially connect with. If you have students preparing for exams, Break Wall Blues is also listed in the Conservatory Canada Contemporary Repertoire Syllabus at a level 4. In today's video, I'll show you what skills this piece can build, who it's for, how to introduce it, and also do a score walkthrough and performance. So let's get to it. This piece builds confidence in late elementary, early intermediate students who might think that jazz is too hard for them and are reluctant to try it. This is an accessible piece with a repeated left hand pattern that allows the right hand to practice swing eighths and get used to moving around the blues scale. I love to introduce this piece using the left hand first because it's a great opportunity for students to practice sort of a walking, comfortable, repeated left hand pattern. They can practice the crescendos and decrescendos in each measure, and they can also practice a relaxed hand position and wrist position. So just get them to repeat that first 2 measures. And keep playing that in that position. You can move it up to C, you can move it up to D, just emphasizing the looseness and relaxed tempo as well as hand. This will let the student relax into the left hand while the right hand does play around with the blues scale melody. I also like to teach the right hand of this piece without any of the ornamentation, so none of the grace notes at all to start, just learn the main notes of the melody in the right hand. This lets the student get used to the fingering as well as familiarize themselves with the blues scale and moving around to those different notes. It's also important to know which notes fall on the strong beat before adding those grace notes in. Let's take a quick trip over to the score and I'll share some teaching tips there for Break Wall Blues. The first thing I want to talk about in Break Wall Blues is the chord structure of the 12-bar blues. And you're probably used to teaching the 12-bar blues, but I like to point it out anyway because sometimes it's not as obvious if it's not exactly 12 measures long. So at the beginning, we've got a G major chord, 1, and then the 4 appears in measure 11, and then back to 1 in measure 15. Now the dominant or 5 chord occurs in measure 19, followed by a 4 chord in measure 20, and then a resolution back to 1 or the G chord in measures 21 to the end. So this does follow a 12-bar blues structure. It's not exactly 12 measures long, but it has the same general chord structure, and that's how I like to introduce it because I think it's important for students to do a quick analysis of the song with you and understand the structure and why it sounds the way it does. The second thing I want to talk about for Break Wall Blues is the right hand motive and how it changes. So again, this has some repetition throughout of that main motive. That's what makes it catchy and easy to learn in one sense. But in another sense, it does add a challenge because the motive is not the same each time. And I think it's important to go through and notice with your student the changes and where they happen. So if you notice, measure 7 has that same motive from the beginning, except that there's 2 repeated Gs instead of a quarter note G. And that's the first change I like to point out. And then in measure 9, you'll notice instead of just a pair of 8th notes from the B to the D, there's a group of triplet 8th notes, and so the B is repeated twice. It adds a little bit more musical interest instead of just having the exact same melody repeat in the right hand. If we move on to measure 11, you'll notice that this motive is the same as measures 3 to 5, but it's in a slightly different position on the piano. It's in a C position. It's actually using the notes of the C blues scale. So it's the same repetition from the beginning, but in a different position, C position. It does return back to G position in measure 15. In measure 17, that motive has been changed just a little bit, again by adding a triplet onto the end of that measure instead of just 2 eighth notes. So you'll notice the triplet eighths at the end of measure 17. I love pointing out patterns to students, but also differences in patterns, because that really helps when it comes to memorizing a piece. And so that's why I find this to be really helpful. It also is, I think, valuable for students to understand the structure and how all the notes and motives fit together. Here's a performance of Breakwall Blues for you so you can see my hands move over the keys. Watch and listen for some of the teaching points that I mentioned throughout this video. This piece is such a hit for recitals or performance classes within your studio, but it's also suitable for exams. This is a Conservatory Canada Contemporary Repertoire Level 4 selection, and Breakwall Blues can be found in my intermediate piano collection called Cottage Country. This book can be downloaded instantly in PDF form from my website, oceantalesmusic.com. I also have studio licenses available for teachers who want to distribute the pieces throughout multiple students. You can also purchase a hard copy edition from Red Leaf Piano Works. I hope you found this video useful for your studio, and if you'd like to watch more teacher's guides with tips on how to introduce pieces from Ocean Tales Music piano books, check out this video next.